Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with great guest Thierry, right?
That's right.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing amazing as always. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for coming to our show. Today's topic
My
is going
pleasure.
to be about dating, actually, and he's very much expert in that. He has written great book and articles as well as podcast on it. So let's hear from him, his experience, and so forth. So tell us about yourself.
So, my name is Thierry Dufour. I am what you would call a dating and high performance coach. And I essentially take men from a place where they feel unfulfilled in their life.
Mhm.
Romantically, they might have it down professionally, but romantically, and there are also some connections with their personal lives, and moving them through a transformation, taking them to a place where they feel that fulfillment in either their dating life or in their current relationship. And this obviously has an amazing side effect of them feeling more awesome about themselves, more energized, more alive, bigger, so to speak.
And so I would like to ask you, how did you end up starting this career?
Well, it was essentially, I started with being a teacher. My background is being a teacher for around 12 years, ground school education. And after a while in that field, in that professional field, I kind of met a ceiling of development, professional development.
Mhm.
And so things naturally shifted. I got kind of tired of it. I wanted some more challenge. I was hungry. I went to see my bosses and asked for more responsibility, and I got some project management and some system setting up, and I started to run a small company on the side. But I still hit that ceiling of development and variation, be
Mhm.
more hungry quite fast. So there was a natural shift for me to just one day say, I need to change something in my life. I'm not excited enough when I get up in the morning. So I went down and I just had some thoughts about quitting my job and quitting also a university that I was studying on the side as well. And then I looked into what can I offer the world where I feel excited about it on a daily basis. And in my private life, some years back ago, I had a bad love experience, and I decided to sit down and say, okay, I must have a different approach to this to avoid these kind of things or to do better next time, right? Because it can be very painful and frustrating when you're having a bad love experience. And so I started studying up a lot upon the concept of dating and attraction.
Mhm.
And at the time, it was a process to get myself out there, to get to know myself better, but also just to be better at the dating and attraction process and have a lot of fun in this, rebuild myself, reheal myself. And so I started to go on a lot of dates over several years. I would some weeks I would go to 4 or 5 dates a week actually.
Mhm.
And I did this with a lot of success, so to speak. I had a lot of fun. I had some great feedback. It was just an amazing experience. And then from time to time, I stopped because I met some amazing women and went into relationships until I finally met my partner that I'm with today. And so when I quit my job at the teaching area, I decided to look into my competency in my private life. And I said, okay, I can combine my way of offering my knowledge to other people, structure it, and help other guys that were in the same situation as me, feeling frustrated and confused by some lack of success or some pain or some bad experiences in dating and love. So I quit my job, even though I had only 2 months of finances ahead. And I said, I know enough to offer proper value to the world. And so I sat down and I founded the Dating Scholar and went online and did that.
Mhm. And that is interesting. So I like that, you had, first of all, being teacher, that's a great profession by itself. And then also, usually I find usually teachers are actually very good with educating. And I think that is definitely going to play an important role and help a lot of your actually this career because, you have this tendency to explain and kind of go more in depth and kind of make them feel comfortable, which is very important for any topic. I mean,
Absolutely.
and then that, so I think that's definitely gonna help you. And so I was reading some of your post and they were very interesting. So I think so I'll ask you first, starting with one of those questions. I think you've mentioned about being for men as their normal approach, So what are men looking for dating?
What men are looking for in dating?
Yeah, when what they are looking on a date, what they are, what is their mission, or what do they want out of the date first?
So, well, it depends how far the guy is in his personal development, because the the point of a date is to have fun in a romantic setting where there's also sexual tension, right?
Mm,
This is the main point. This is the main purpose. This is how you define a date. And the guys that I work with that come to me, they usually have their mindset or their perspective a little bit shifted on that. That perspective and their mindset when they look at a date is like, I hope she will like me. I hope I'm good enough. I hope this will move forward. Men are very objective and visually focused. So for them, it's about conquering something that's outside of them. Whereas in fact, what they need to conquer is inside of them. And what they need to conquer here is to adjust their mindset to I am enough. She is actually also very lucky to be sitting with me, to have a date with me, and conquering the nervousness and the pressure and just have fun in that situation. And as a bonus, if the woman that's sitting in front of me is compatible with me and I also like her, then we might get together romantically. But the date itself has nothing to do with the external validation that a lot of guys go on a date on, like saying, okay, if she likes me, then I feel better about myself. Okay, if she likes me, then it's very cool because she's very hot. I can tell my friends and I can also feel better about myself. So I would say this is the one of the first shift that we make when I work with men. And it completely frees them from this mental pressure that they have to shift that attitude. And there's a lot of work ahead to get to that attitude at that mindset. It's not something you can suddenly decide, obviously depending on where you are in your self-confidence and your dating experience, but it's not something you usually just can decide. But when you get there, you just have a lot more fun, and counterintuitively you also have a lot more success because your vibe is different. You give other people permission, like through your vibe, to relax and be open
mm,
and vulnerable and connect with you more authentically when you are in that state of mind that I described earlier.
mm. So what you're describing is they are focused, of course, on wrong different things, which probably has lesser of the success probably. You know so the foundation for the relationship has very little to do with that part, unfortunately, and then they are focused just on that, and they forget what the inside, like you said, with should be the one communicating more than the just their outside, and then they come up and just feel good about themselves, that oh, that person is attractive and they had a great date, right?
Yeah, and attracted to me. I get the
And
validation she likes me. Therefore, I also give myself permission to like me more.
okay, so oh wow, so it's like self-reflective type here.
Yeah.
So it's not yeah, exactly. Okay, so and what are women looking
So women go on a date with the attitude, let's see what happens. That's one thing. And the second thing that they go on a date with in forms of attitude and thoughts is this guy good for me? So of course they're also going to be nervous. But when they're being nervous and a little bit submissive and hoping that the guy will make the experience comfortable for them, then the date is set up right. Because we're talking about these energies, these polarities with masculine and feminine. And it goes to the feminine energy to be a little bit uncertain and to seek the masculine to put the focus and the stability in order. So when a woman comes to a date, she has these two thoughts, but if the guy is also very nervous and doesn't, hesitates a lot on leading the conversation or going for a move or telling her what's going to happen, then the woman obviously will take over and go into more of their masculine and say, okay, so I have this idea and we can talk about this, and kind of try to make him feel good and comfortable. But she's not going to be sexually attracted to him. So what she wants when she goes on a date is that she wants to know that this guy is good for her in the terms of that he pushes her over to her feminine, and she also just wants to see what happens. She's much less usually focused on the objective that I need or I want to have this guy to kiss me, or I need or I want this guy to sleep with me or to go on a second or third date. Obviously, at some point, he's going to be like, oh, I hope I can see him again if she really likes him. But essentially, this is not the attitude they go on a date with. So what women are seeking, they're seeking a guy who knows how to lead, how to have the stability, how to have the calmness, so she can lean a little bit more into him, because this is how you create sexual tension. And this is not to say that women cannot do this, they just don't want to be there when we're talking about the polarity that needs to be there when we're creating sexual tension, because then you can just end up by being friends, or oh, it was a nice night, and it's just a guy I went on a kind of date with, but I don't really remember who he is now 2 months ago.
Mm. And that, for our conversation, this probably also applies to both, same-sex couples too, right?
Absolutely. There will always be a polarity in the energy. So when we're talking about masculine and feminine, it's not gender specific. Like, we all have masculine and feminine energy in us, and they switch from context and people you're with and time of the day. But essentially, the one you have the most of, average, and when we're talking about attraction, then as a man, you're in your masculine, she's in her feminine. And if we're talking about same-sex gender, there's always going to be one that's a little bit more in the feminine and the other one in the masculine, right? That will never be the same.
Yeah. So just for audience sake, I'm just saying these principles apply to all kind of couples.
Exactly.
So also, it is fascinating. I asked a lot of our relationship guide and gurus that we are living in a modern age where we have all kind of social life, and we have everything available on our fingertips. And why is that we have more problem now with the in relationships than older times when we didn't have that? So, what is there a social media or all these problem, or is that because these a lot of things are fake and then they don't have a reality to it?
This is a very interesting question. Believe it or not, I've not been asked this question so specifically before.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. So, I would say that, first of all, we don't know for sure, on average, if people have more difficulties in their relationship now than they did, let's say, before the smartphone, let's say 50 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because how do you define problem in a relationship? Like, if you're just together and get by in a marriage because it's security, it's stability, it's what society wants, does this mean you don't have problems in a relationship? Does this mean it's a good relationship? So how do you define a good relationship? That would be my first thing. The second thing I want to point out here is that it's much more exposed, our difficulties now, because of the internet. We share a lot more frustration. It's open about how people have how their experience are in those things. And finally, the most important thing is that our brain is constantly seeking this source of comfort. We call it the path of least resistance, instant gratification, the easiest path through to get those dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin injections, these hormones in our body. And so we get a lot of that when we get social validation. Like, what is the most important thing for people in their heads? It's social status. If they are important, right? What are the two basic fears from human beings? It's fear of not being good enough and fear of not being loved. So people will generally do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So when we have at our fingertips an abundant source of getting this social validation from matches on online dating apps or chats or somebody asking us to get together, then we can easily seek this path of instant gratification, filling up our basic needs. Unfortunately, this in the long term will make you feel unfulfilled and unhappy, which is why there are no single sitting on dating apps for 15 years in a row and just feeling happy all by themselves. Like, eventually you got to replace it with something more meaningful, right? But I do believe that when you have these frustrations and it's difficult today with dating, especially online, is because you meet a lot of people that are just seeking this instant gratification, and so they're not really wanting to connect with you. And if you have the attitude, like I'm going on a dating app, and I'm chatting with people online to go on a date to seek real romance, like amongst 100 people, you're probably going to have a very large proportion, the majority of people who are seeking most of the part to just have this instant validation, this gratification. And so these two don't match. You're the one seeking something meaningful, and the other one just wants to use you or use your communication or your presence to just say, there's someone that likes me. And so this is why we have difficulties with it. Now, this is up to the dating app companies to do something about their software and their algorithms, so there's not a lot of this, because you also see lots, especially with women, they go on dating, some women go on dating apps and put their Instagram profile or something like that so they can get more followers. So it's up to these software companies to regulate this. But I would say that this is, when you read on forums about people's experience with dating apps and stuff like that, this is what they complain the most about, that people they seem to feel used to just have a match or a small conversation, and then the other person just moves on, right? So the meaningful and the depth here is kind of lost somewhere.
Yeah, and that is true. So I think that is like anything. We have other websites where people sell things and do beside when I'm talking about dating. But and so the question is, would they have they only get what it is portrayed. So whatever is the picture there, right there, might look perfect and might be actually a lot of flaws in it too. And then they would not look at that. I mean, they will just look at the face value of that thing, and then what you are trying to show them. And that's, I think, is a problem. So because nobody knows, it's like pictures, so it could be with filters and so forth, and they might be hiding a lot of their actuality from, because they're afraid of, like you said, failure and rejection, because, and that probably is the, in my opinion, one of the problems we have, is because everybody wants to look perfect when they display that picture or profile, right?
Well, they want social status. They want validation, feeling that they're good enough and hear it from other people. If they
Yeah.
display it in a way that they're perfect, that's one way. If they just hear it, that's another way. But they want some kind of fulfillment in this social status form. We all want that.
And so I think, and that will be interesting, now other thing is what I always find fascinating is some of the dating websites, they have this algorithm match points. Okay, so they want to go with what we call matching strategy. So tell me, which one works better, or what is the better approach? Is matching a better, or opposite attract?
Matching or opposite attracts. So yeah, I have a clear answer for this. I just need to take a moment.
Oh no, take your time. So there are people who would, let's say, they're going on date, and what they're looking are more people looking for. Okay, what strikes them is that they are eating similar, they're kind of talking similar.
Yeah.
Or was that be a like deal breaker, or was that be kind of turned off?
Yeah, I get what you mean now. So when it comes to figuring out your ideal match, I actually made a worksheet on this, how you can do this. I might share the link with you if you want
Sure.
in the show notes. So when it comes to figuring out who is good for you, right? Remember, we talked about women go on dates with the attitude, is he going to be a good fit for me, right? The guy essentially also does that. There are things that are good that match and things that are good that are opposite. Now let's start with the opposite. What is good with opposite is the temperament. Like it's like a nature balance, that someone who's excited and talks a lot and opens a lot and high drive will match well with his counterpart, someone who is more calm and present.
Yeah.
And not necessarily present, but just slow pace, takes it more easy, invests less energy in on average in that moment, right? So there's a different in temperament where they match well together. So this is why you can see an extrovert and an introvert sometimes going very well together. Now this is when it comes to opposite, right? Then we have something that's a little bit opposite, a little bit the same. It can be interest. So interest, if they're the same on some levels, that's very good, because then you have a lot of things to talk about, to dive into, share passion. And if you have diverse interests, it's also interesting because then you can grow together, right? If you had exactly the same interest, I would say that this is difficult because you have no area of growth together. And what growth means is that you understand what the other person likes and invest his or her time in, and that you learn about it, right? You discover something new that you can become good at or know more about. So it's good if interests are kind of the same and kind of different as well. Now, what needs to happen on the match level where things need to be the same? These are your fundamental life values. These cannot differ too much. And life values are things like, how important is communication for you? How important is commitment for you? How important is fidelity for you? How important is things like engaging in religion in your life? How much does it play a role on top of other things? How important is kindness for you to other people? Forgiveness, patience, stuff like that. These fundamental values, if they do not match, then you will have a problem in sustaining the relationship for a long while. And this is why you can have exciting, passionate, short-term dating relationship where they have matching interest or two high temperaments together, or even different, but they discover along the way that their base values don't match. So it's very fun in the beginning, especially with the honeymoon phase, with all the hormones going all haywire in your brain. But then afterwards, when you're dealing with figuring out how to live together and how to communicate on a frequent basis, this different in values will show up. And then you will start to not understand why the other person is not understanding you. You will have difficulty in communicating on the same level. They're just gonna build up resentment in different areas, and the relationship, the partnership, the dating will eventually break. So I would say same level matching, interest can be slightly different, and temperament needs to be different.
Okay, so certain things could be different, and they could be actually do well, but certain things nobody will compromise, of course, But depending on what are the overriding. So we have seen, of course, interracial. We have seen different religions. We have seen different cultures. So those are. But the question would always is, how is the other person accommodated enough or not? Because if they give enough room to learn about and then experiment, or let's say if they have a different hobby, one plays golf, the other plays racquetball, then the question, well, then that could be okay, as long as they play separate, that's fine. I mean, they don't have to play together. But that's the question is, if they have if they want to hear about it, okay, well then how was your game and blah blah. I mean, I think basic remains same. So those
Yes.
could be the same. So watching movies together, okay, well, then one might like uh, comedy and the other like romance or whatsoever. But the question is still they have same movies, and now the question would be always, can they compromise on who would go first, or what would be washed? Then probably that will come with experience, or would who should somebody try to look for in this initial relationship? What would help, in your opinion?
Well, if you have a lot of different interests,
Mhm.
let's then go deeper. Go down to your ground values, right? Your fundamental value, as I talk about. Do you
Mm.
have the value of that you need to have some space? That it's okay to have space. It's
Mhm.
okay to have some time together, and that it's okay for you to have your specific areas where you go deep into this, and you just looking on the side, and your partner just looking on the side, thinking it's awesome you do this, but she doesn't want to participate. Is that okay? And the other way around, right? And do you need to be in contact frequently or rarely? Or do you need to have an interest for each other's things? Or is it okay if it's no interest? Like these come down to your common values. And we're talking about difference in religion and politics. There are two reasons why people with different religions and in political views can be together in a fruitful and high quality relationship. And the first thing is that attraction pierces through everything. Like you heard it a thousand times before through novels and poetry that love conquers all, right?
Yeah.
So attraction is a very strong force. This is Like the epitome of this is Romeo and Juliet, where no matter the obstacles, they just couldn't not be together, right? So traction is a very strong force. This is reason number one why it can cross all these differences that I mentioned before. And the second one is that your base values can be the same, even though on the surface it looks totally different. But
Okay.
when you and so if you have different religions, so let's say one is Muslim and the other one is Christian,
Yeah.
it depends in your values how high a priority you put your religion lifestyle. Like if it's very, very high on both sides, and there are some incompatibilities with how the lifestyles meet each other, then we're going to have a problem. But if you're Muslim and you put it like it's something that's important for you for your identity, but it's not as high as other things like like proper good communication, giving space to each other, but it's just part of your identity. You want it to be there, but you don't place it extremely high, then there's no problem in having that difference. So how it looks on the surface when you say, okay, she's a Republican, he's a Democrat, or he's a Muslim and she's a Christian, it depends on their order of priority, which is based on their value. So that's why it's so easy to say, oh, look, there's a Muslim and Christian together, so opposites attract. There's a Republican Democrat together, so opposites attract. Well, if you dig deeper and understand how closely they connect these external traits to their identity and their fundamental values, this is where you will understand why they can work together.
Hmm. And is that possible that first I will just ask you then, what are the signs somebody should think that date is going in wrong direction? So like bad date.
Yeah. So two people that starting dating and you can see externally that they're not good for each other, or in a relationship unit, or both.
Both. I mean, like a failure date, or it's not gonna be good. So the warning signs, can they see that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I just had another talk on toxic relationships the other day, so it kind of connects to this a little bit. So one of the warning signs for two people not being sustainable long term. Well, there are so many, but let me just think for a moment. So I would say when you don't feel, and when it's visible, that you cannot unfold your identity. And what this means in practical terms is that when somebody relaxes and just are themselves, talking loudly, telling lots of jokes, talking a lot, talking about their passions, and you can sense that the other person is kind of putting a lid on it. Like the other person is kind of maybe ignoring it or feeling embarrassed or trying to stop, right? That's a sign that this is not going to be sustainable, because they don't have a common value, that they embrace each other as they are, and they really want to give space, whether they like everything about each other or not. Like this value of embracing each other like that and fully accepting each other in this relationship, and that we go into it because we do that, and we would have stopped if we didn't do that. This is one of the things you can look at. Another thing is bad communication. So if the communication is that you have a lot of disagreement and friction, and things don't get better afterwards. So if you have a fight or a discussion, it can be rough. Being in a relationship and making sure it works well is a job. It really is a job. It takes effort. And so many people, especially guys, underestimate this, because guys bring focus to a relationship and women bring depth. And so if you as a guy cannot go deep with the feminine, you're going to have a problem. And the relationship needs to be nurtured. You need to put effort in. And this effort comes in be willing and daring to have communication when things are uncomfortable and difficult. So when you have friction and when you have arguments or fights, you can have several of those without the relationship being bad, but things have to be better after each one of them. You have to have learned something afterwards, and you have to be able to look back and say, I was wrong here. I will listen to you and do something different for the next time, right? You cannot always be perfect in the heat of the moment, because emotions come into play, and you gotta give space for emotions to be there. But you have to be better every time there's an issue. So communication, especially if you're willing and able to communicate what you want. Now, the third thing is bad communication. This is when a relationship will not last very long. So when you are not willing and able to go into that depth with proper communication, and you start using toxic tools like stonewalling or blaming or insulting or generalization or um, like what's it called when you kind of like make the other person's view small,
Oh,
or you talk to other people about your partner negatively, or you involve others, or you decide to ignore or something like that. When you use these toxic communication tools, this is because there's something in you you need to work up, but it's also essentially because you don't believe that being vulnerable and open and putting in effort in communication is something that's going to solve it. And when you stop believing that, it becomes a habit, and this becomes the path of least resistance. And from the outside, you can definitely see when people have started using these toxic tools, like this couple. They're really, you don't want to be around them. The energy is bad, right? So these, I would definitely say, these are some of the signs you can look for if you want to see if the dating or the relationship is not going to move forward as much. And the last thing I can put in there when I'm talking specifically about dating phase is, do they give each other energy when they're together? Do
okay.
they give each other energy? So when they're together and meeting up, are they excited to meet up every time? And are they energized after they've been together? Or are they like, oh, I'm so glad she left, or I'm so glad he left, or I don't want to see her for at least a week because, oh, it's too much. Like, especially in the honeymoon phase, if you don't build each other up energy wise, it's probably not going to last like sustainably a long time.
Hmm. So, what are some of I'm glad. Thank you for pointing out that's really good. Toxic environment, toxic tools, and like you said, it has somebody. So, I mean, things go always wrong. There never will be a perfect scenario. But the question is, how do you fix or come back from that? And what tools you use? That's kind of is very nice that to point out that is important. Is who has this ability take higher road or in better control, that understands more depth of relationship and brings it back, right? Because any long-term relationship, if cannot come back, it's not gonna go next level, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I also want to ask, like in the dating world, let's if somebody is on a first date.
Okay.
So, what are some of the bad signs, that say is kind of give another partner if a glimpse that this is gonna end soon? Are there any words or body language that this could pay attention to?
Well, I would rather formulate it as that it's clear there's no attraction between the two people. Like, if we're going on a cafe or bar and we're looking at two people who are obviously on a date,
Mhm.
you give me 40 seconds and I can tell you what's going to happen with those two people.
Yeah, yeah. So anything you can tell.
Yes. So there's what we call in the coaching world, what we call indicators of interest.
Uh-huh.
So that means that they're the standard ones that we all know. They're mirroring each other with their body language, right? And then women have certain ways of moving and touching their hair and their lips and looking down when they are thinking, when they feel the sexual tension when they're sitting across from a guy, when they're feeling a bit insecure, a little bit more in their feminine because he is stepping up in his masculine, right? And also if they have an open body language towards each other, like if they're facing each other, if they're, you can usually look at, what's interesting to do, a small trick that many people don't know actually, is that look at people's feet. If people's feet are pointing toward each other, this means that subconsciously they are invested. And what's I will come back to it, but a small thing you can try out for yourself when you're talking to someone that you clearly see is interested in talking to you when you're standing up is, let's say this is the woman, let's say this is the guy, and you have a great conversation. You just take a small step while you're talking, and in the course of 1 minute, you're gonna be moving all around. She'll be turning all around, and she won't even have noticed that you did this, right? And so this goes to the body language that we subconsciously like invest in another person when we like them. And so obviously there's a lot of eye contact. And what you can hear on the language is that it's playful, it's light, it's fun. And love is playful and fun. And there's I have a saying that I like to say that couples that play together, they stay together. So if there's like a vibe of people playing together and it's light and the energy is high and you have the body language is indicator of interest with investment towards each other, then this is great. Then you have sexual tension, and then you can see that okay, I'm gonna let those two have their dates because they're probably gonna have a very cozy time. One last thing you can look at, which is more obvious, is touching. If they touch each other, they're already on a step to getting closer to each other, because the point of romance for the masculine is to pierce through the feminine on a spiritual level, emotional level, and eventually at the end, physical level. And touching is part of the physical part of it.
Okay, so touching. So, and so are there like, dates you see sometimes they go wrong first, but eventually come back to, so disaster date first, but then 2 and 3 and 4 could be better.
What I see more is the opposite, actually.
Mm.
If there are a first date where things go bad and then 2, 3, and 4 go well, I've done it a couple of times in the beginning when I didn't understand this stuff fully, and I started to kind of learn it. Like when you learn everything, when you learn something new in the beginning, you can't implement it like half because you're still experimenting, you're not fully embodying it, right?
Mhm.
These cases are where you are very much up in your head. Like we opened this podcast with guys, what usually a mindset that doesn't work for them on dates, right? They're up in their head about trying to make her like them, saying some compliments just because they think it's the right thing to do, like being focused externally rather than internally. And when you feel after first date that she doesn't really like you that much, that stings, especially if you really liked her. So if you're a guy that's on the way to being aware about these things, that he needs to relax more, be more in his own body, and just have fun, it might hit you, it might awaken something in you. Holy shit, this I really want this to go well, and I realize that I can do totally differently on the next day.
Mm.
So they might communicate this actually openly and honest to them. And the
Mm.
reason why this can work sometimes, saying something like, look, I was really out of space, out of my excuse me, in another space, in my own head on that first date. I would like to give it another try, and do things differently. This is authentic. You might not get it because it's also a little bit, if she wasn't attracted, she didn't like you, she might not want to, but it's very authentic. And so I have done this a couple of times and seen guys that go from a first date and then pull themselves together kind of to just be more in the present and focus on having fun and connecting empathetically, saving it, so to speak, second, third, and fourth date. But what I do see most, the very most, is guys connecting with women very well initially, and then they talk her out of liking them.
Oh, so that also is so. So, what are those signs, or what are those things you think that goes wrong with that?
Well, this is because usually, like, women have an abundance of male attention, right? Especially if she's physically attractive. She is used to, on a weekly or monthly basis, to having guys coming up to her trying to get her attention. And if she's an experienced dater or experienced in relationship, and she's a little bit more aware also about the whole dating dynamic and all that, like, she knows exactly what's going on. She knows exactly what happens. So women will do this, what we call in the coaching world, testing, right? It's a concept that was invented by the PUA community back then, which I'm very against, the pickup artist community. But they coined the term testing. And what this means is that women on dates, or when they see a guy that comes up to her, they're going to try to rattle the guy a little bit, challenge him, make him feel insecure, say something weird or a little bit demeaning or teasing or off-putting, just to see how the guy reacts. And so guys that are confident or relying too much on their looks or something, approaching and landing a first date, when they have a woman in front of them that they really like and they get into their emotions, they lose their shit. They go up in their head. They're like more invested and not so indifferent as they were in the beginning. And so they try to make her like them a lot. And so when they're in that place, we talked about this in the beginning, they will say things that are inauthentic, they will not relax, they will not have the same vibe and energy. They will be more in their feminine, insecure. And when she goes into her masculine, there will be no more sexual tension. Now, in the case where a guy is with a woman that is experienced in dating and kind of throwing these jabs and these tests at him, he's going to lose his shit too if he's not worked on himself, if he's not secure about himself. Like he might be explaining a lot why he's good at something, or showing off with how much money he makes or how successful he is, or he might even get irritated or angry if she irritates him when she wins in a game, like they play pool and she's like, aha, you lost, I thought men were better at this, at being focused. And he's like, oh, but you can't say that, and it was also because this and this. As soon as you go into self-qualifying mode, defending yourself, getting upset, you're not light, you're not fun, you're not peaceful, you're not secure in yourself, you don't have that vibe that's attractive. So this is how I can say that you talked her out of liking you, and this is a sign. This is amazing because we use this exactly when we analyze a date and a guy approaching a woman. When I work with clients, we use exactly the situation. What can you take out of this? What does this tell you about yourself? Okay, this tells you you have insecurity on this. This tells you that you have something that you need to look at on this. This tells you that this is your trigger. So let's take this, learn from this, change it, and do better next time. So it's really important in those situations that you don't take them personally afterwards, but you take them as experiences that reveal, that tell you more about yourself, about the direction you need to improve on.
Mm, mm, mm. So that is important to find out that things can go wrong, and even after second or third or fourth date, even after even they're physically involved, there's still things can go. You can mess up the whole relationship. So it
Usually when the guy really starts liking the woman.
yeah, and that probably then most likely then you'll do something, or you are at your lowest performance in terms of cognition, because you are so overwhelmed with other stuff that you just kind of you're you can really go down. That's true. So well, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you, and any final thoughts you have, and then we'll say goodbye.
All right. Well, just to wrap up the last point you made here, dating is not a performance. It's not about being, your best to get a success or a result.
Mhm.
It's it's about working on being in a place where you see yourself as something valuable to other people, and you see other people as very valuable to you.
Mhm.
And when you see somebody else that's very valuable to you because she's very attractive, or she's very fun, or she's cute, or she's sexy as hell, then your own insecurities about your own value might come up because suddenly you see her as higher. So you want to do things to match that level, right? We'll talk about what's the most important thing for humans is their socially is their status, right? And when you go into that, I gotta get myself up there instead of just resting in who you are. This is where things go wrong. So when we're talking about things going wrong in the 4th, 5 days, because they usually really start liking her, so they're more invested, so they put her up on a pedestal higher.
Mhm.
But if they're really happy and fulfilled about themselves, like really going for what they want and have dare to look into their own insecurities, they're just going to see her as an amazing person to be with. Okay, it's so cool that she's actually has these qualities, but I have these qualities too. So it's also cool for her that she met me. So I would say this is the bottom line. This is the bottom line. Work on your own value for yourself. There's a lot of stuff that we do when I work with people initially, how they live their lives, their habits, their self story. Are they focused on their mission, what they want to go for? Can we evolve their self-esteem, their emotional self-discipline, so they feel better in every area of their life, more prepared to go dating, and also through dating, it raises their self-esteem and a positive self-story, right? This is the main focus in the beginning, and this just makes it so effortless and easy once you have worked up your self-story and your emotional self-discipline, and raised your confidence and your self-esteem. It's just so easy and much more fun to go dating and meeting women out there. So this is why I do not separate at all high performance, which is getting the best out you can of yourself, and dating. These are things that go together. They're intrinsically connected.
Mm. And that is very nice. And so also remember to make sure, what are you want to achieve out of that is important, because short-term relationship has short-term goals as well as objective and a play action. So you could be attractive one day, and then if you want to live with that person longer, you need to have more than that. You
Yeah.
need to have a solid foundation for any high-rise building, as we say. So if you have better foundation, you'll have a great high-rise. If not, then unfortunately that will not last longer. So I think we should be clear in ourselves first too, what we want out of relationship. If we
Yeah.
want just fun, that's a different approach. But if we want to have both and have long term, then you can do that too. And so we should be clear in our mind. I think, like you said, people have such a high tension build up and failure, as well as sexual tension, as well as all kind of tensions built up. So that is like any performance anxiety situation. In that aspect, to perform has to be coached. Yeah, or at least should know exactly what to do, right? So then is because you get few minutes, it's like a play, you get few minutes to perform on the stage. But if you are not scripted, if you don't know what you are gonna say on your lines, and how you're gonna do, you should look perfect. I mean, nobody is perfect, but at least you should perform flawless, or at least better, best of yourself, realistic, a real one. Not a fake one, like you said. Don't try to match too much, because you might fail, right?
Yeah.
So, and that is so important. So with that, check his website. What is your website, so people can look you up?
So if you want to raise your self confidence, your social skills, improve your dating life, your romantic life, either in with the women that you're dating or in the relationship you're currently in, and feel more fulfilled and powerful in being yourself, then you can contact me on LinkedIn. Search for Thierry Dufour, the dating scholar. My webpage is thedatingscholar.com, where you can directly apply for a consultation with me. We can have a talk. I can analyze the situation and tell you if I can help you. But the most direct form of contact is go on LinkedIn and Thierry Dufour, the dating scholar, and also check out the ideal woman checklist that we're going to put in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. I think if somebody wanted to call in and really needed advice, so I will reply them back with your website. You know.
Or
Uh,
my LinkedIn page, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, somebody said, can I call? Well, I guess you have heard his website. You can call in and get advice.
Yeah. Oh, that's someone writing that now. Can I call in? Really nice. Absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, or go to my website, thedatingscholar.com, and click on the have a free consultation with me.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll be happy to
Okay.
help.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay.
It was my pleasure, man.